If you wanted content for serious riflemen, you had to subscribe to Precision Rifle magazine, and it very only the most diehards did that. So it didn't have no near the subscribership as say the big magazine,
and it was hard to find.
Yeah, and like it just wasn't out there.
You couldn't just go like when I was a kid.
Yeah, you wouldn't find it on the shelf.
Couldn't find it on a shelf. You had to go to like
in.
especially.
You had to be cut in. Yeah. And so I kind of liked the world better back then because it put me in front, Now with the internet and much more broad-based information, I noticed probably around the late 20 single digits, 08, 010, right in there, because the internet, YouTube, the world has been flooded with would-be riflemen, right? Mm-hmm. And then the 6.5 Creedmoor was developed.
Yep.
Everybody tried to figure out what Jeff was doing at night for us, and so scopes. And so now, like just in my own personal experience, back in the old days, I could drive around in my home valley there, and I may be the only competent rifleman I see that day. And animals were easier to get because they weren't being pressured at distance. So it wasn't uncommon to have a dirt road with 20 people on it, and no one even looked past 200 yards, and I could look over there and see a nice buck at 500 yards that no one had even saw because they simply didn't look. Mm-hmm. It was, outside of their comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And so for years I was able to kind of benefit from, extra skills and knowledge. That's all gone now.
Yeah.
Everybody out there is Carlos Hathcock. Animals have learned to stay out of line of sight no matter how far away they are. And so I'm kind of torn, On one hand, it's good that skills and knowledge is being that's what we do for a living, right?
Yep, that's right.
But on the other hand, I can feel the effects on the other side.
Yeah. It needs to be wielded with responsibility.
Yeah, and a lot of people, like the people that come to our courses, get a really good education on that, and they get to find out what they can do and can't do. Mm-hmm. A lot of people just watch a Best of the West video, go down to Cabela's and buy a Savage 6.5 Creedmoor and a Vortex, and download a free ballistics chart, and they start just winging shells out there.
Yeah, it can be that way.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so those people, I would suggest, find Kalen or someone similarly qualified, and learn what your own limits are.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like we tell students in class, or it's like I want you to flirt with your limitations here in class. Figure out where you're at, but we need to stay well within our capabilities when we're in the field until you continuously push those deeper and deeper through your own pursuit of knowledge and training. Like that's the only way that's going to happen.
And you got to figure the people that come to your course or would even know what you're talking about right now are probably in the upper 20% of cognition. Mm-hmm. And people being who they are. I mean, I just got done with 2 public land hunting seasons, and the things I saw in the field are unbelievable.
Dude, okay. I bet. I mean, hang on one second here. I got, so Aaron Martin. Hang on. Aaron Martin. So he just went to one of the stands.
Okay. What for? What can you say?
He was hunting.
Really?
He was hunting. I'm going to pull up a picture right now. He was successful.
Wow.
He killed a nice Marco Polo sheep.
Whoa. Look at that beautiful thing.
I know. Pretty crazy.
Look at that beautiful country. What a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I've known a couple of people that have gone there, and
man,
they said the mountains are just absolutely stunning.
I can never do that, but if you could, you should try to do that. It's so awesome.
Yeah. He said he made a 780 yard shot with a 7 PRC and cross canyon, 35 mile an hour full value wind.
Yeah, but he's in the upper 1% of people with ability.
When you're looking at conditions like that, And it's just like, if it's, it's constant, you've been watching it, you're just like, all right, man, here we go.
Yeah. And he has a tremendous amount of trigger time.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
And
he's constantly out shooting.
What I saw this fall was a lot of people that had very little trigger time, very little knowledge. But again, they had, seen things on TV or cable. Mm-hmm. They had a credit card. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm not in favor of taking away our rights, but the stuff I see out there, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the future, the biologists and game wardens try to do something.
Yeah.
Just because of the things I've seen.
Well, so my son had a questionable hunting experience this year too, that you and I talked about offline. Right. And it affected him.
Yeah.
It absolutely affected him. He talks to me about it now all the time. And, the only thing I can explain to him is that you were able to experience, now you're going to be able to experience an even wider spectrum of hunters and what other hunters believe to be ethical behavior, because that's on a spectrum as well, right? That's all. We don't all have the same ethics, right? We don't all have the same moral structure. So what is acceptable to some people is not acceptable to others. Right. And, he's starting to learn that at a young age, but I mean, you're going to learn it sometime, right? It's got, you have to be exposed to it sometime.
And culturally things are different. So I remember when this argument first started, 20 years ago, there's cultural hunting patterns, say back east where it's thick, mm-hmm. Where Pierce is in Vermont, where it's totally ethical and normal to shoot at running animals because that's how they do.
Oh, yeah.
And so then when the criticism started with some of these marginal ethics out west at distance, some of them said, well, hold it. Are you trying to tell me that shooting at a sprint deer at 100 yards to the trees is more ethical than me shooting at a deer at 400 or 500 yards?
Sure.
Which there's there's some validity to that.
Validity to that as well.
So it's like you just said, each guy has to kind of decide how he's going to do. Out here, we very rarely shoot at running animals. We would think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
But I can see if you grew up back there where you can't see past 100 yards, you're going to be in contact.
Yeah, all the time.
Probably most of the deer you see are going to be moving off.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're going to be moving. Yeah. Gun season's usually during the rut, too. So everything's already
you grew up active. Over there.
Yeah, I grew up over there.
So
Yep. So it's, rifleman-ship and quote-unquote being able to shoot, right, is... that's what we're in the business of providing education in. And so like part of this history series is just really to talk about like, where did this heritage come from?
Right.
Where did these skills come from? And lately, I've been reading a lot and consuming a lot of information on these time periods.
Yeah.
A lot of that's been inspired by these conversations because it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, it to me as well. Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating. Just, from the standpoint of having the courage to come from one continent to cross an ocean, which was questionable at best, right? A lot of people didn't survive that trip.
Right.
And then to be able to land on the East Coast of the United States and then be able to make it from the East Coast to one of the frontier ports of entry, right? Be it St. Louis, be it Fort Worth, be it, one of the major outposts, right? That basically bordered the frontier. And after that, you were on your own, dude. Like,
right.
You're literally on your own. Like, there is nobody coming to save you. You are at the mercy of not only Mother Nature, but you're at the mercy of Native Americans that are viewing your presence as like not only no, but fuck no.
Right.
Right. And so you got people that are trying to steal your shit because they're either underprepared or had tragedy strike them and they're trying to survive at the same time. So like you're seeing humanity at its most raw form, and it's not even it's just a search of a better existence and a better life. But that's the depths that those people were willing to go to get that.
Yeah, I've often thought that that's a demonstration of how freedom works. So like, if you even look, even today, Russia's vast tracts of wilderness are uninhabited. Mm-hmm. And it's because there was no Homestead Act.
Right.
There was no incentive for the regular peasant people to take that tremendous risk.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Same thing with big portions of China. Mm-hmm. We were able to civilize and make inroads into this wilderness because of the way that our government worked, despite its problems even now. It doesn't mean you got to be perfect to be good. Regardless of our problems, the system outcompeted all the other systems.
Yeah.
And dudes were willing to load their family and kids on a wagon and depart from St. Louis into the total unknown at great risk of life and limb and treasure,
knowing
for a better life.
Full well that there is a significant possibility that all of my family members will not be with me when I get to that destination.
Almost guaranteed, yep.
Almost guaranteed. Which is, man, yeah, it puts everything back into perspective. Especially,
an old mentor of mine mentioned this dynamic back when I was a young man, and he had a theory. He was like me. He had a lot of theories, and he said that for a long time, the west coast of North America had all the booming going on. And if you go back to the 1700s, the American colonies had all the dynamism. And his theory is that when a culture gets kind of calcified, ossified, the dynamic, entrepreneurial, ambitious people are the first ones to go and take a risk.
Right.
And so he said you could actually follow it, moving across Europe to the west, crossing the ocean to the west, all the way to the west coast of North America. And now if we look, it almost seems like it's going back to East Asia, right? In some ways. So it's like you got this constant movement where things get ossified and calcified. If there's an outlet, the people that are the most aggressive, ambitious, entrepreneurial, dynamic, they're the first ones to go, right? So you can see his theory's got to be mainly true. If you're living in the East Coast of North America, things have been civilized now for 100 years. A lot of the opportunities have been filled by people. A lot of the land's been purchased. It's kind of got its own. It's almost like it is now, where it's young people are having a hard time finding a place. If, let's say, Elon Musk had already opened up Mars, and there was some type of a Homestead Act,
right?
Who would go?
Who would go? Yeah,
it wouldn't be the sleepers.
That's true. That's
right?
Absolutely true.
And so, I kind of think that's part of the problem with the West right now is that, for many, many millennia, the young people had a place to go when it got ossified, and now they don't. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah, there is no place to go.
So now they're sitting here. The baby boomers are hanging on to power like with dear life. They just simply won't get out of the way.
Get out of the way.
Won't let go of the money. Won't let go of the power. And the young people are like 30 now, and, normally at 30, a guy should already be well established. He's still living in his mom's basement. Mm-hmm. And so we shouldn't be surprised at some of the stuff we see now with the young men, especially rejecting what's going on.
That's been huge.
Yeah.
And you and I have spoken about this on many occasions, and I've also talked to other peers of mine that have the same sentiments about what's really truly going on with the young men of America right today, and the young men of the globe.
Yeah, it's not
right?
good.
It's not good. So, I mean, I'm sure we could go for
a long time. We better get down to business.
We better
here,
get down to business, because this is we were going to do a history podcast.
Right.
So remember what happened last time? We started talking, and we got like 45 minutes in, and I was like, yeah,
you had to make a separate video.
Let's make a separate episode. But so this one, we're talking about Jack Hinson, and many people, before we even got to this conclusion, people were already ahead of the game. They were like, yeah, you guys need to do one on Jack Hinson. So
so it's by request. I mean, he was on the list, but we got enough pressure that we said, hey, let's jump into this.
I'm excited for this one, man. I'm excited. People really enjoy these. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, people really are enjoying these. So I'm looking forward to learning more about this, because basically that's a history lesson for me, and I like history. And let's talk about Jack Hinson, man.
All right, so let me talk about what my materials were. So this book I'm holding, it's called One Man's War. It was written by a retired Marine Colonel, Colonel Tom C. McKinney. And Colonel McKinney, if you watch this, or if your family members watch this, you have done an excellent job, sir. This book is tremendous. The backup information you provided to substantiate your assertions in this book are phenomenal. And so I hope you're out there. You did a tremendous job, and I recommend anybody who, obviously I can't cover everything that's in the book, but if you're a reader, I highly recommend this book by Colonel Tom McKinney. So that's one reference. Now, in the process of me researching on this, I've learned about Jack. Like I said earlier, my family subscribed to the Precision Rifle magazine, and every month they would have an article in there about precision rifle shooters from the past.
Okay.
And so I learned about Jack Hinson 2 decades ago, because someone did probably a small 3 or 4 page article on him, and I always kind of kept him in the back of my mind. I never forgot about it. Mm-hmm. And he hit the high spots, Well, in preparation for this podcast, I went deep, and I found this book, and I would say this is the best. If you can only afford to do one thing, get this book. It's by far the best single piece of information. However, I also learned the rifle's extent, thank God. It exists today. It's been preserved, and it's in the hands of a judge in Tennessee named Ben, and I think Kaylin, we'll be able to link that video.
Yeah, we'll link the video for sure.
We'll be able to get that in there. And then another thing I found that was also fascinating was on Sniper's Hide, I found a guy who built a replica of Mr. Hinson's rifle and proceeded to try to conduct shooting tests to see what the actual capabilities of the rifle were. And in the process of doing that, he was allowed to go to the judge's home in Tennessee and inspect the actual rifle. In the process of that, he discovered that he had made a mistake on the barrel twist rate of his own rifle, and so he went and replaced the barrel at great expense to himself, and his name's Reed. And Reed, if you're out there, and I'm going to call you. I've only talked to him twice. I'm going to call you again before this video is released. I've got some more questions for you, but thank you as well, sir, for your dedication and time and expense to furthering this project. And so that's the 3 main sources. Now, of course, there's all kinds of other types of sources, but those are the 3 main ones.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned something about Pierce and Sniper's Hide, and I immediately I reached out to Frank, and Frank hooked me up with him like right away, same within 5 minutes.
Yeah, so. It's a huge what do they call a post on Sniper's Hide. It took me quite a while to read it all, and I was just enthralled. And I was like, hey, I called you. I'm not a member of Sniper's Hide, but I knew that you know Frank.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, hey, there's this guy. And it happened like that.
Mm-hmm.
You got a hold of Frank, and within no time, I got an email from Pierce, and we hooked up.
He was super eager.
Yeah, he was super generous. He immediately sent me a link to the video he'd done, and he also has given me several links to other things that went on in the War of 1812, which is actually before the Civil War. We actually had 2 wars against England. Mm-hmm. The main one, but then there was a dust up in 1812 as well.
Yep.
Where rifles, played their part.
Much of that, well, not much of it, quite a bit of it was fought literally in my hometown.
Yeah.
At Fort Niagara.
Yeah, okay.
All up and down the Niagara River.
Yeah. And if I remember right, they torched Washington.
Yep.
They burnt the White House.
Well, they also burnt many of the homes along the Niagara River corridor from Buffalo all the way on up. Basically, the whole length of the Niagara River from Lake Erie to Lake Ontario, very strategic, and Fort Niagara was a main strategic hub because that controlled the upper Niagara River, and it also controlled the port of entry from Lake Ontario, from like Hudson Bay coming in from the Atlantic.
Yeah.
And then the Canadians, the British put in another fort, Fort George, on the opposite side of the river.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's about, I've measured it many times. It's like the closest end, it's about 800 meters. But from like Fort Niagara over to Fort George, it's got to be a mile at least. Yeah. In terms of across the river, the way the direction is. So it's a bit. It's a poke.
Yeah.
Even for cannon artillery.
Yeah. Cannon's a big deal back then.
Huge, man. I mean, it literally ruled the entire battle space. And
it'll play a big part in this story as well.
So let's do it, man.
Okay, so let's get into this. So, Jack Hinson was pretty old at the beginning of the war. He was 55 years old.
So we're talking about the American Civil War.
Yep. This is a Civil War story. Mm-hmm. And he was 55 at the beginning of the war, which back then was considered old. It's pretty old even now. Certainly not considered a normal infantry person. And he was a farmer. And the reason he turned into a Confederate sniper is because of actions that were committed against his family. Jack was born in July 1807 in North Carolina. Now, back then, Tennessee and Kentucky didn't exist. So North Carolina just went
westward.
And then South Carolina, right? And that became Kentucky and Tennessee.
Got it.
So he was born in 1807, and he moved with his family to what would become Tennessee as a young man about 1830. And at that time, all young men were raised to ride, shoot, fish, hunt. And as a young man, like all young men then and even now, especially in my case and yours, he couldn't wait to be old enough to be allowed to go to the woods with his own knife and gun, right? That was just a rite of passage, as it were. Mm-hmm. And so that's how Jack grew up in current-day Tennessee. He grew into about, he's a small man. His height ended up tapping out about 5'5", but he was lean and strong. And Colonel McKinney was able to find a note in a journal or a Bible where a woman said that he looked like Popeye. He was known for very long and muscular arms. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that would be worth adding to his description.
Sure.
His temperament was that he was serious and strong-willed. His posture was erect. His gaze was steady. And like most Southern people, even today, his manners were courtly and genteel. And his strength of character was apparent. He was quiet, who spoke sparingly, yet in his manner and countenance there was a suggestion of great strength and courage. And, I'll say one thing here. My family's from the South, both sides. And when I was reading the descriptions of Jack, it reminded me so much of my grandfather. He was that same way. He spoke sparingly. He was very courtly and genteel, very gracious to everyone. But it was obvious he had tremendous character, right? Even though he was not bombastic. He wasn't like people we see now. Mm-hmm. And so it almost brought tears to my eyes in some cases.
Perhaps now people would look at that as more antisocial behavior.
Yeah, but if you experience it, it's not.
Correct.
It's weird, yeah.
It's just a different vibe.
If you listen to what I said, maybe you would think it was antisocial, but if you get in the presence of one of these Southern people, you'll think to yourself, these are the humblest, honestest, best people. Mm-hmm. Even though they don't say a whole lot. I don't know how to explain it.
Yep.
Even though I grew up with it, right? It's very strange. Confederate Major Charles W. Anderson, a wartime adjutant to General Forrest. Jack had served with General Forrest at least 3 times during the course of the war, and he leaves us the only surviving complete physical description of Jack. And we're jumping ahead here, but I just want you to understand, to start off a description of him. Major Anderson described Jack's clear gray eyes, compressed lips, and massive jaws, so he had a big jawline. And he offered the opinion that Jack's natural appearance clearly indicated that under no circumstances was he to be trifled with. And
so eloquently spoken.
Yeah, that was not me. That was a quote from Major Anderson. And so this will play out throughout the rest of this story. Jack was not afraid to use violence at certain times. Even though we just talked about how genteel and polite he was, if it was time for violence, Jack knew. And so that just kind of came across. And I'm sure that people in your field have that same effect on people, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's obvious that you guys understand violence, mm-hmm. right? You don't have to say it. It's just we can feel that, mm-hmm. right? It doesn't mean it's not threatening either. It's not like I'm not afraid, but I know
Indeed.
that violence is your purview.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jack, his actual name was John, but he came to be known as Jack. He first appears as the head of a household in the 1840 census. Back then they did a census every 10 years like now. And it was in current Stewart County, Tennessee. He would have been 32 or 33 years old at that time. And see, back then they only really counted the head of household. Like now they want to know everybody. Back then it was just the head of households who they wanted. Then you would just list how many kids and dependents were there. And how the vote worked is the head of household voted, and everyone else got represented by that vote.
You're right. Yep.
Versus now, everybody in the household gets a vote, and we won't even get into whether or not they were smarter than us. We'll just leave that be for now.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah. Jack's wife was born Elizabeth James, and she was related to Jesse James.
Interesting.
She was born in 1817, either in North Carolina or Tennessee, because I said it kind of the borders changed a little bit. Judging by their first child's age, her and Jack were married in about 1835. She would have been 18 and Jack would have been 28. Part of Jack's character was he was very goal-oriented. He was what we would call a high achiever, type A person today. He was not only a prosperous farmer, but he dealt in real estate, both urban and rural. He did timber. By 1850, they'd established their permanent home. They called it Bubbling Springs. It was a 1,200-acre farm. just southwest of Dover. It eventually became about 1,200 acres, and by 1850 they had already had 6 sons. So Elizabeth was working hard, and that's just the ones that back then it wasn't uncommon for them to lose pregnancies or lose children, and they may not have put them in the Bible, right? Mm-hmm. But by 1850 he had a 1,200 acre farm, Bubbling Springs, just southwest of Dover, with 6 sons. And back then, all southern farms were expected to take in travelers, but especially a big one like his. He actually had a whole separate kitchen and rooms and stuff for people. So he became, known to travelers, hey, this is a good place to stop over, to spend the night or two, and you're going to get fed, well, and of course they would pay. Mm-hmm. If you couldn't pay, you still got taken care of, though, right? And that's the way it still is. Mm-hmm. By 1860, they've got 10 kids now, 8 of which were at home. The 2 oldest boys had already moved out to make homes of their own. Robert was 23, that's the oldest boy, and George was 20. And that left William 18, John 15, Albert 14, Joseph 12, Charles 10, Thomas 8, and then Elizabeth was blessed to have had 2 little girls. Later, Mary was 3 and Margaret was 2. And also living with them at that time was a young woman of 24 named Amanda Nelson, and her job was to teach the children, educate them. So, he's not like a huge plantation owner, but he's fairly well off.
1,200 acres is probably a pretty decent size.
Yeah.
Spread. I mean, that's a fair amount of land.
It is. The big plantation guys had tens of thousands and hundreds of slaves.
Yeah.
Jack had 1,200, and we're not exactly sure how many slaves he had. They figure it was between 10 and 20, somewhere right in there. Mm-hmm. And so, basically he's doing good,
Yeah,
he's prosperous.
Prosperous.
Kids are healthy. Wife's happy. The slaves, the servants as they called them, they had his name as well, Hinson, and they were not abused. They were not beat. None of that went on at Hinson's place. They were well taken care of, and in fact, one of them, her name's Sarah. She basically ruled the roost in the house.
Okay.
The kids did what she said, period. No one got in her garden or her kitchen, and she was in charge.
She was household 6.
Yeah, she was household 6. Yep. Exactly. We don't know how Jack voted in 1860, but we can kind of accurately speculate. So, obviously, through the 50s, Jack, as being a well-off, educated person, was aware of what was going down.
Right, politically.
Yeah. One of the few people probably in Stewart County. Let's back up, and I forgot to talk about physically where they are. It matters. So today, if you go on a map and you go to southwest Kentucky, northwest Tennessee, you're going to see this big area, real thin area that's bordered on the west and east by 2 rivers, the Cumberland on the east, the Tennessee on the west, and it's a big, national forest now.
Okay.
It's called the land between the lakes.
Okay.
Well, back in Jack's day, it was called the land between the rivers, or between the rivers in their southern jargon. And it was totally populated with people. Jack's people, Scots-Irish people.
Okay.
That all come over from North Carolina. Once, after World War II, they had big hydrology projects, and they dammed up those 2 rivers and built the big lakes that are there now.
Okay.
And flooded a lot of the bottom land, and they forced the people living there, which are Hinsons and everyone else that had been there for years, they forced them out. And an interesting side note is these Scotch-Irish people that end up here had been earlier forced out of the Highlands similarly, right? They were forced out of the Highlands by the English lords that owned everything, and they got tired of their clans and their BS. They moved them out. So a lot of them, like we were saying earlier, said, "Hey, we're going to America where we're free."
Right.
And they eventually ended up in this land between the rivers.
Yep.
And then look what happens.
Man.
Same thing, right? So that I forgot about that part. So that's where all this takes place.
It's all context of the story.
Yeah. So we don't know how he voted exactly, but we can infer it. There was one other person in Stewart County, Tennessee, that was more prosperous and well off than Jack, and he actually, in the election of 1860, he had Lincoln's new Republican Party. He had the old Democrat Party, which had kind of split in half, so that's like almost two parties now. And then there was a fourth party that this friend of his started, and basically their attitude was they didn't want secession, but they didn't want their way of life messed with, right? And I think I wrote down here, his friend's name was Bell, and he called it the Constitutional Union Party.
Okay.
So Jack was for the Union. He did not want there to be two different countries. But he also didn't think that the abolitionists and the northern people should be able to come and tell them how to live down there. He didn't think they understood their culture.
Fair enough, yeah.
Fair enough. So we suspect he probably voted for that guy. That was his friend, his beliefs, but we don't know. Now I want to talk about his bubbling springs. It was like an idyllic place. It was named for these springs coming up out of the ground right there in his backyard, which provided constant, cold, clean, fresh water. And so Sarah was able to she constantly had good water to take care of food and people and everything else.
Yep.
And then back then they built this thing called a spring cooler, where they would build like a little shed right over top the spring. It's called a spring house, and that was like the best refrigeration they had.
Oh, because it's so cold.
Yeah, so when they had fresh meat or vegetables or things they wanted to keep for a while, they just stick it in that spring cooler, the spring house, and it would keep, for about as long as it keeps in your fridge now.
Yeah, I bet you if you could, figure out a way to make the walls thick enough, right?
Right. Well, and like I said, we'll see. There's a picture of and people in rural places still have spring houses. And Colonel McKinney got some photos of them, and you can see how they are.
Interesting.
So where the spring is, they basically dig a little trench, a 3 or 4 foot deep trench. The spring can run down, and they usually make a pool.
Right. Keep
and
that cold water.
And then they put a pipe in there so that they, it's just constantly running out of there. But right over that trench, they build the spring house, and like you said, they insulate it, so all that cold water coming up cools that house down. And it's probably roughly the same as a refrigerator now.
Yeah.
Can't keep things forever, but if one of the boys went out and got a deer, you could hang the quarters in there for a week, and eat on them and stuff.
Yep.
And everybody had one. And Bubbling Springs, that's what it was named for. He also had a creek running through there, which was called Hinson Creek at that time. The farm was totally self-contained except for things like sugar and salt. But they had a blacksmith shop, they had a tack shop, a stock yard.
It's like most ranches.
Yep. Cotton, gin, everything you need to make clothes out of cotton, and flax and stuff.
As self-sufficient as one could be.
Yeah, yep.
Within reason.
Within reason, yeah. They had corn, fruit, bean, everything you can imagine. So the way the economy worked is that most of everything Jack was producing was produced for sale, but as well as the servants and the family obviously had enough to take care of themselves, and so the way the farm worked, even how farms work now, I grew up on a farm and a ranch, so I kind of know, and I think it's part of the problem. So like when I went into the world, I realized I was different. No one understood causal relationships. They would see an outcome and just want it. But when you grow up on a farm, you realize if you want an outcome, you've got to start
There's a process to get there.
And I just, as a young person, I recognized that. I realized there's a process, but a lot of my peers had no idea there's a process. You can't get 4 on your own. You've got to go back and add 2 and 2 together.
Right.
In some cases, months and years in advance. Mm-hmm. And so that's how that farm worked on the cycle. There was always work, always getting out in front. I mean, they're planting seed beds. Valentine's Day was the day that they started planting seed beds, almost like a greenhouse, and they'd put a tarp over it to protect it from frost, so that by real spring they had already plants kind of going. They'd put them out there, and everybody was involved.
Yeah, I mean, that was your life.
Yeah,
that was your life.
Yeah,
That's what you did, and
everybody was involved. Not only the servants, but all the kids, Jack. Everybody worked all the time, right? On this constant revolving cycle of spring, summer, fall, winter, over and over again, right? And so, and they were happy. It was idyllic, and
that was the simplicity and the beauty of life at that point in time.
Yeah. And Jack, like everybody else, was very deferential to women. It was the custom when a woman entered the room, the men would all stand up. They would help her get to her seat. Mm-hmm. They always offered women an arm when appropriate, anytime they were getting in and out of stuff. Mm-hmm. And that was just part of their...
That was the culture.
It was the culture they grew up, they were in, right? Anybody that showed up, it was normal to pay if you could, and most people did, but if you showed up and were, for whatever, not able to pay, you still got taken care of. You were fed, you were offered refreshments. And I remember my grandfather was that way, even in the 20th century. Mm-hmm. Anybody that showed up to his house was not only fed and treated well, but was made to feel like they were important. Someone was interested in them. Mm-hmm. And growing up, you don't really understand. You don't see reality till much later. He died when I was 27, and as years have gone by, I look back on that, and I'm like, yeah, my grandpa, he had maintained the southern value system, mm-hmm. and I wish I had gotten more of it, actually. Right.
Right. Well, I mean, definitely a culture.
By now it's 1860, so war had been coming for a while, in parallel with Jack's success in business and family. He just wasn't aware of it, and neither was anybody else. If you were to go back to 1860 and ask anybody, even educated people like Jack, or even Abe Lincoln himself, the most powerful people, do you think that in the next 5 years we're going to kill 600,000 of each other and destroy the country? No one would say, "Oh yeah, that's absolute." They would say you're nuts.
Right.
That's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. Right. And so we can't really hold Jack accountable for not foreseeing. And it's humbling if Jack Hinson and Abe Lincoln and the smartest, we're not smarter than them, and they didn't apprehend. Where's the evidence that we can apprehend what's going to happen to us?
True.
Yeah,
a lot of people have that. They're just like, oh, that would never happen today. You're just like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Humans are human.
Based on what we can see, the probability that we're going to apprehend what's going to happen is virtually zero. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Humans just aren't going to be able to apprehend what's going to happen. There's no evidence historically that
anybody could foresee
that
anything.
We could, right?
Yeah. Or the extent.
Yeah.
Of an event.
Yeah, if we were to ask, they probably would say, "Hey, there's going to be a dust up," but not what happened. Right? It wasn't a dust up. It turned into a brutal bloodletting at the highest level, not repeated since. Thank God. So that was going. So the election happens in November of 1860, and that kind of started a domino effect. Southern states started to secede. Just based off nothing that physically happened, just based on Lincoln's rhetoric and the New Republican Party's rhetoric alone, states started to secede. Jack did not agree, like I said, with the abolitionists, but he didn't want to see the Union dissolved. He believed that there would be a fight over states' rights, and once that was resolved, he'd be allowed to go back to the way he'd been living. That's kind of what he thought. No one thought the war was over slaves at that moment.
Got it. It was all over. It was all over your perception of being able to maintain your way of.
It was all about states' rights. So all the way back at the beginning of the country, you already had the division, and Thomas Jefferson and his side were big on the states are going to have the right to succeed, and the other side had to accept that because they probably wouldn't have got the southern colonies to join them unless they gave them that provision. It was already a big difference in the cultures then, right? And then later when Jefferson was president, he secretly maintained that right for the states' rights to succeed, right? And so that, at the beginning of the war, even Abe Lincoln didn't think this was about slaves. This is all about whether the states have the right to succeed or not. Mm-hmm. And to give the North their due, what they were worried about was, if we allow the southern states to succeed, what's going to prevent us from repeating the 2,000-year bloodletting that Europe had, right? So Rome falls, in 400 AD. All the Europe breaks into all these different countries based on ethnicity, language, culture, and then they spend the next 2,000 years killing each other by the millions. So the North's argument was, hey, we can't allow the South to break off because then we'll fight each other for the next 2,000 years. Mm-hmm. And oh, by the way, we'll also be vulnerable to foreign powers.
Sure.
Because it's a lot harder to attack America united than to start playing political games and say, well, hey, we want to attack the North, so we'll bribe the South or vice versa.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's what happened in the Revolution, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the North's attitude. And you can see that both sides have an argument, right? And it's just unfortunate that cooler heads, a lot of people were trying to prevent it on both sides. It wasn't like both sides at the time were like, hey, we're bloodthirsty.
Right.
There was a few people like that, which it's kind of interesting reading about how it is today. It's the same way. I bet if you were to go talk to the regular people in America right now and the politicians, I bet you the majority of them are like, hey, let's figure it out.
Yeah.
But it seems like the crazies get all the airtime, that are trying to, and they really don't have any idea what they're asking for. They have no clue what they're asking for. Somebody to make them stop. Shut the fuck up, right? And let's figure this out, because we're going to see what happens when that doesn't happen.
Right.
Right. It's not good.
Yeah, and the world's seeing that in Russia-Ukraine conflict. You're seeing, unfortunately, you see it everywhere in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, you saw it. Everyone
sees it. You got to experience, you have to experience it to let it settle and go, okay, dude, that's the result of either no communication or just pure malevolence.
I've had several people in my life, everyone gets mad and doesn't like what's going on, and they're like, "Oh, hey, Nate, we gotta kick ass," and I'm like, "Hey, man," I go, "I'm not doing anything unless Kalen says we are." Because it's outside of my purview. I don't know. He does.
No, I know very little.
And if he tells me it's time to go,
fucking ask that. I know very little.
Then I guess we will. But I said, I'm going to try to avoid that.
Yeah,
because
no,
just based on what I can study, it's the people that want to kick ass. Here's what I've noticed in history.
Yeah, the saber rattlers are. Yeah, I've experienced that too, man.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, we should be over, and it's just like, okay, well then take your ass over there.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. The people that want to kick ass,
I know a guy.
They never end up actually being out there.
Right. Yeah.
They end up somewhere behind the lines, and they don't have to pay the price for their own bullshit.
Yeah. And then, you know, what ends up happening is that oh man, all of the post effects are never witnessed. They're never fully appreciated. They're never fully you don't appreciate the aftermath of that because you don't experience it, right? Or you don't have a loved one that experienced it, or you know somebody close to you that experienced it, and that everything's perspective now. Like it's all perspective. It's crazy. You know? It's just the older you get, and the more you study stuff like this, and the more that you do evaluate history and you see what happens. Like these stories are not that fucking old.
They're not.
They're not that fucking old.
Not at all.
So you really have to give these stories credence and study them and listen to them. It's important.
So what happened is on April 12th, 1861, Confederates fire on Union-occupied Fort Sumter, South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And so that starts the war. On May 7th, the Tennessee legislature passed a resolution to use military force to support the seceding states. So that's Jack's legislator just voted to use military force in support of the seceding. Mm-hmm. The governor of Tennessee calls for volunteers, and companies start springing up in Stewart County, the county Jack lives in between the rivers, between the
everybody's rattling sabers.
The young men, as usual, are wanting to get out there.
Let's get after it
and kick some ass. There was a lot of justification. The Southern boys were much more adept with firearms, with being in the woods, with camping out, and all that stuff, and they knew that. Mm-hmm. But they may have forgotten some other more important things like industrial might, logistics, mm-hmm. right? And the way it played out, the war lasted for 4+ years, just because of what they recognized that they were going to be a better soldier, but they still can't overcome.
Yeah, it's like wars are won with logistics. I mean,
yeah, and you're just, there was some times which we'll talk about in the future here it wasn't impossible for the South to win. They could have won, but they couldn't have won the way that they went about it. Mm-hmm. From the very top at Jefferson Davis's level, they just didn't apprehend the situation they were in. Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson, I think, had a more accurate view on what it's going to take, but they were professional soldiers. And Jeff Davis politically wanted to maintain a defensive war. Because in the honor code of the time, they could point at the North and say, "You're the invading army.
Right,
you're the oppressor.
Yeah,
you're the tyrant.
We just want to be left alone,
and we're down here defending ourselves." Mm-hmm. And Jeff Davis wanted to stick to that over the objections of Lee and Jackson, who understood war and said, "You're going to lose this, bud.
You can't be doing it like that.
You've got to go on the offense while we have the ability." Because they could see clearly that in a war of attrition, they're going to lose, right? Mm-hmm. But you get the leaders you get, and shit happens, right?
That's right.
And, of course, all this is way outside of Jack's purview.
Yeah.
He's a yeoman farmer in Stewart County, Tennessee, trying to figure out how to keep his little flock together, right?
Yeah. I mean, every day is a struggle for survival.
Yeah. And Jack does not want to be in the war. He tries to stay neutral. Again, he's thinking, hey, eventually this states' rights issue will be solved, and then I can go back to my life. That's what he's hoping and praying for.
Right.
Okay. Leading citizens like Jack were encouraged to rent out labor, both freemen and slaves, to build the defensive forts being built on both rivers, the Cumberland and the Tennessee. Jack declined. He didn't want to be on record of providing, and he'd got paid too. They were paying for the labor, but he didn't want to be on record of providing that labor to build Confederate forts along the rivers. Mm-hmm. And so he even though he could have provided labor and got paid, he said no. On February 4th, 1862, the first blue uniformed troops entered Stewart County.
1862?
1862. So what happened is 1861, the first battles were over in Virginia, but the war hadn't really come to Stewart County yet. The Tennessee had raised troops. A lot of them had gone, off to Virginia, and they started building forts because strategically, see, the way these rivers work, they're actually flowing north, both the Tennessee and the Cumberland, and they flow into northern occupied territory. And so the North, I think, was smarter and accurately said, hey, we've got to get control of those rivers because we'll be able to steam product in there. So the Tennessee started building forts along both rivers to try to stop that, but they weren't as well organized, didn't have as much resource. As you can see, they're asking for people like Jack to provide the labor to do it. The North didn't have that problem. They would just press people in, Hey, we got millions more people, right? So by the February 4th of 1862, though, the first Bluecoats showed up via Grant's mission to take Fort Henry. Fort Henry was one of the Confederate forts built along the rivers there. And so now Grant is an unknown at this point. Anybody who knows Grant's history realizes that Grant was just put in because they needed people. But he had basically already been drummed out of the army earlier. But because war creates opportunities, he's down there and he's trying to take Fort Henry. It would be 15 years before the last Bluecoat left Stewart County. No one knew that at the time, right? Mm-hmm. By the 13th, Grant's troops are actually camping, marching, and fighting on Hinson's land. They're right there in his face, right? Jack, as a civilian and a neutral, was allowed to freely go between the lines. And so he was able to converse with General Grant, his subordinate commanders, as well as the Confederate generals and subordinate commanders. And it was his land, and so he was just kind of allowed to operate, and he rode on both sides and he was concerned about the safety of his people, his servants, and his direct family. So that's why he was out there trying to figure out what was going on. Jack's not a trained military person. He's a farmer, and so he's getting an education, right? Asking commanders, hey, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? What's going on here? That kind of thing. Now, he takes Fort Henry, and now Fort Henry's on the Tennessee, and now he's going to go overland to Fort Donelson, which is on the Cumberland. Grant is. During that, Jack's gone from the house for about 3 days, just keeping up with what's going on because things are happening fast, Mm-hmm. When he gets back after 3 days of kind of fall in the battle, he found out that 2 of his sons had been captured during the surrender. John and George, and they'd been shipped north as prisoners of war and were accused of being. The boys had gotten, because the battle's right on their farm, and these boys are like in their mid to late teens. They got up close enough to the battle to try to see for themselves what was going on. Mm-hmm. And then when the Confederates surrendered Fort Donelson, which later we'll see Colonel McKinney hammers them over, they collected the two boys up and figured they were spies.
Got it, yeah.
Okay? Mm-hmm. And actually shipped them north. It took a month to return them. They finally, got a hearing, found out these are boys. They were not enemy combatants.
Now you got to return them to where they came from.
So they went back to their house, but it took a month. Jack didn't even know that until he got home after he was gone for 3 years. So this battlefield is going over miles. Mm-hmm. So one man cannot understand what's happening in the battlefield.
No, yeah, it's even with modern communication, that's difficult to do. And
right.
Imagine the sizes of the troop movements. Huge.
Yeah. So we'll briefly talk about Colonel McKinney's criticisms of what happened. So on the first day of Fort Donelson, the Confederates actually won that first day. But they had this strange kind of what Colonel McKinney called like a consensus generalship. They had like 3 different generals on the Confederate side trying to figure out how to conduct the battle. So instead of like continuity of leadership, it was like this weird political shit show.
It's like a dynamic of egos.
Yeah. And 2 of them were Colonel McKinney makes, I think you'll appreciate, a distinction. He said there's political generals and he called them warrior generals.
Oh, absolutely agree.
Because he said what was going on was that because of the need and all the openings, that some generals were politically appointed, they had no military understanding. They were not warriors. They were put there because of their relationship or status or whatever.
Or it's just you're filling a billet.
Yeah, versus guys who were actually professional military, lifelong military officers that knew what to do. And that's what was going down at Fort Donelson. At least half the generals there were political appointees. And for reasons that he doesn't even understand, they gave away a victory. They decided to surrender 12,000 troops, even though they'd won.
That's pretty insane.
It is. And escape with their lives and leaving their men behind. Think of this. Now, here's a side note. A colonel was there by the name of Colonel Nathan Bedford Forrest. And when he got wind of this, he told those generals that were above him to go pound sand. And he'd already recounted it and realized, hey, not only do we not have to surrender, if we were going to surrender, we can still leave. The Union has not closed us in. And he argued, hey, I'll lead the whole army out of here, all 12,000 men.
Right.
They said, nope, it's over. And the generals bailed themselves, left the 12,000 men. General Forrest took his cavalry and any infantry that would come with him, and he led 1,000 men out of there against his orders. And he was willing to do that because later he was not court-martialed. The guys who'd surrendered the 12,000 troops were. And so it was just a huge snafu. Now, Jack was aware of all this because he was riding around the whole time. And about a year later, they called him to Columbia and had him testify. And he testified General Forrest is right. There was no Union army preventing the escapement of the Confederate people. And I don't know, we don't know what they did to those officers that did that, but we know that General Forrest was right, and Jack proved it. And so that's the Battle of Fort Donelson. The Confederates could have won it. Victory was given away by bankrupt leadership. And so now Stewart County's occupied. Their army has been seized. Whoever's left has wheeled off, and so now General Grant owns your area, right?
Right.
Now it turns out that's a big difference. Once the occupation started, that's when all of Jack's problems started. Even though he had General Grant at his house, fed him at his table, let him camp troops on his land, all this. Once General Grant left to pursue the war, and it's probably true in your guys' day, there's a difference between the quality of the troops that are at the tip of the spear that make contact with the enemy and fight, and then versus the occupying troops.
Certainly can be.
Yeah, and it certainly was back then.
Yep.
The quality of soldiers and officers that were occupiers versus the quality of soldiers and officers that were fighters was totally different.
Yeah.
They didn't use the good ones to occupy. Those were like the second, third stringers. Mm-hmm. So discipline was poor. The officers' control over the men was poor. And you can see where we're going here, how this is going to, turn into a bad deal. In the late fall of 1862, the tragedy that caused Jack to become an unplacable enemy of the Union happened. John and George Hinson were murdered, mutilated, and displayed. What happened was the boys were out hunting on their own land, their dad's land. But by now, like I said, once the main armies moved on, you had guerrilla warfare starting to happen. So the Union was suffering losses from what they called bushwhackers, snipers, ambushes, to the point where the Union's countermeasure to that was to enact a legal policy, they made it legal, where they could just kill suspected bushwhackers on the spot. They could kill their friends on the spot, their family on the spot. No hearings, no due process, no habeas corpus. They're basically considered terrorists, and suspicion was good enough just to be killed. Mm-hmm. So the boys were like in their late teens, so, of fighting age.
Oh, yeah.
But not quite out from underneath their father's authority yet. Remember, the two older boys are outside their father's authority. They'd already gone off. William had gone to Virginia to fight under Jackson and Lee, and Robert, the oldest boy, actually went further south and created his own guerrilla unit that was known as the Hinson's Irregulars.
Okay.
And he was effective down there. But these two boys are still living under Dad's authority and are just basically farm workers and sons. Well, they'd gone out hunting, and the Union had regular patrols. They would run out from Fort Donelson with cavalry and some infantry, and part of their patrol was through their land. And they run into the boys. The boys didn't run. These same two boys had already been captured and sent north and returned.
Right.
So they didn't run. They didn't think they were in that much danger. They weren't happy. They resented these guys being on their land and disrupting their hunt. And they came up and said, "Hey, man, you're guerrillas." And the boys said, "The fuck, no, we're not." I said, "We don't care what you say." Seized them, took their guns, marched them down the road a little ways, killed them both, hooked onto them with ropes, drug them through Dover, Tennessee, cut their heads off, and then said, "Now we can go get Jack and seize all his stuff," because everyone's wanting food and resources. Mm-hmm. So the lieutenant that was in charge of that patrol mounted up and rode out there to Jack's farm, and the sergeant they'd cut the boys' heads off and had them in a sack. Now, luckily for Jack, the local doctor seen what was going down in Dover and rode out to Jack's farm ahead of the patrol. Took Jack aside, away from the family, and said, "Hey, man, this is what's going down. They're going to be here." So Jack went and got all the guns and hid them. He already had hiding spots, hid the money. Didn't have time to talk to Elizabeth or the kids. And pretty soon the lieutenant is on the porch with his dragoon revolver out, beating on the door.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look past that lieutenant, the sergeant's putting the boys' heads on the gateposts. And Mom saw, everyone saw.
Mm-hmm.
And now out wailing, just totally crazy.
Yeah.
Right. And so Mom's going nuts. The kids are going nuts. They don't even know how this happened. That morning, the boys were just like normal and went out the back door.
It's unfathomable,
right? Yeah.
Right. It's something that just happens in war.
Yeah.
Right? It's just war is absolutely hell.
And Jack himself, even though he's a man, he's having to choke it down. That's his boys, his head sitting out there with their blood going down the fence post. And he wants to lash out, but he knows if he does, he's dead, right? So he's just having to eat it, right? And they demand this, and so they come in, they ransack Elizabeth's house, all the furniture, all the drawers. They're just, no respect. And she's broken, she's just basically laying there a mess. And these guys go through, now the doctor, because they're wanting to arrest Jack and take him back to Dover and hang him. But the doctor reminds them Jack was on friendly terms with General Grant.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that happens to Jack, General Grant's going to find out about it. And I think that's what saved Jack's ass right then. That lieutenant probably wasn't even aware, but he wasn't willing to bet, his career, because General Grant could just do whatever he wants to you, right? And so they let Jack live, and they left. But Jack never recovered from this, obviously. He was like, yeah, I'm going to get in the war now. And so, but he didn't overreact. He didn't retaliate right away. The first thing he did was he ordered a custom rifle. He knew of a gunsmith in the next county over. And Jack was a man of means, so he had a few bucks. And so he requisitioned a custom rifle that he thought would be more accurate than anything he could just, procure rapidly. And then because he's a business guy and had business dealings all over his county and the adjoining counties, he could justify his travels. And he started going out and scouting out, what you would call an FFP.
Mm-hmm.
And he started watching how they move, what all their routes were. They were predictable kind of. They'd go on the same, each
feeling
unit.
Comfortable, feeling complacent.
Yeah, every morning they'd get up and ride out on the same route. Well, he figured out what that route was.
So yeah, this is occupied territory.
Yep.
There's no active combat operations going on, right? So, yep, basically what we performed in overseas in Iraq was support and stability operations.
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing.
Support and stability.
Basically going out there saying, hey, here we are. Don't fuck with us. We're going to police your ass.
Basically, you're declaring martial law.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's exactly
that's all that's going on.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And so Jack just, watched them and figured out how they do, where they go, what times they do. And like you said, he observed the behavior.
It doesn't take much.
Yeah, and then he started to select little FFPs, pre-selected them, prepped them. Sometimes he'd have to make loops in the brush. Sometimes he'd find a natural loop, But he started to prep the ground inside his occupied area in anticipation of when he got his rifle and could go to work, right? And again, this has got to be rare in the history of warfare that there's a guy who's given that much freedom because of the circumstances, right? Because a lot of times I think you guys would just say, hey, who are you? What are you doing out here?
Well,
you're done.
I think it's just a time period, right?
Yeah.
It's time period, communication. It's just so different.
So like
so different, but yet so similar.
Well, when you guys were over there, I guess if could an adult male just go wherever he wanted if he didn't have a gun?
Yeah.
He just yeah.
It wasn't like
Yeah.
Now once Fallujah kicked off, and we were like, yeah, we're coming in.
Yeah.
Then it was a different story, for sure. But up until that point, the rules of engagement were basically, there were layers of this hostile act, hostile intent. And so basically we were under very, very similar use of force laws that our modern police officers deal with, right? It wasn't like we could just go around and shoot people.
A guy'd really have to do something provocative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You'd have to be, you have to meet a certain echelon of criteria.
Yeah. And
right?
Jack did not meet that at this time.
Yeah, he was just doing his thing.
He was doing his normal business dealings
Didn't
according
pose
to
a
them.
threat.
Yep, no gun.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so he was allowed to go out and figure all this stuff out and pre-build all these basically blinds, FFPs, overwatch positions while he was waiting for his.
So before we've used acronyms on the podcast in the past. So an FFP, for those of you guys who are wondering what that is, so it's called a final firing position. It's where you're going after your objective rally point has been established.
Yeah.
Right? So that's your final position. That's where you're going to sit and you're going to conduct your operation from.
Yeah, that's what you're going to shoot from.
Either shoot or observe from.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And even Jack did a lot of observing, right?
Yep.
You have to observe a long time to not only to select targets for one thing. Jack was not just a bloodthirsty killer.
Well, this is a great example
Yeah.
of understanding that sniping is largely observation, collecting and reporting of information.
Yeah.
It's 90% of the job is that, if not more.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And that's how
we're
Jack
seeing this exactly play out. Like he's not going to do anything foolhardy, haphazardly, because he knows that's essentially it's going
to get you killed.
It'll get you killed, and if you're killed and you're dead,
you're done. Yeah.
You can't continue the mission.
Yeah. So he watched
So
a
that's
lot.
stupid.
And he's trying to figure out who needs to be shot. And he's trying to figure out, how do I do this without being caught? Mm-hmm. Because if you get caught, like I said, it's over. So he spent a long time out there in his FFPs.
Figured it out.
Without a gun. Just seeing, what do they look like when they come through here? What can I actually see from here? Mm-hmm. Can they see me from here?
How much of how can I command this? How can I control this space, this ground?
And he'd actually prep it. Like he'd say, well, I could trim this limb here and get a little bit better of a field of fire. I need to build up this brush here to conceal me. And so he spent a lot of time, like months, in preparation, waiting for, because it was going to take some time for the gun to be completed, right? So that's what he's doing. And when he first gets the gun back, it's probably April of 1863. And now he's had a long time to prep everything, watch everything. And he didn't plan on being like an actual Confederate sniper at first. Again, these are Scotch-Irish people. And now you do have martial law, so Jack has to get justice somehow. And
the permissibility of his environment is not a permissible environment.
No.
It's a semi-permissible environment.
And he's got the Scotch-Irish blood running through his veins, and he believes in an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And he can see now, unless he does it, the people that murdered his boys are going to go scot-free. Mm-hmm. That's it. And he can't allow that.
He can't have that.
He can't have that. So, April 1863, he slipped out in the dark, in the early morning, and went to the FFP that he'd already selected for this guy's route, and waited. And it was close, less than 100 yards, and he centered him in the right in the chest with a .50 caliber bullet. Dumped him out of his horse, and was gone. He'd already figured out the egress, mm-hmm. and they never saw him. And he went straight back home, and he knew they'd eventually show up there because it happened to be the lieutenant that had ordered his kids killed. Mm-hmm. So he knew that alone would make him suspicious. And they showed up, and he was able to, have an alibi or whatever that he concocted. And he let some time go by. He did not tell Elizabeth or anybody. It's not like he got home and said, "Hey,
you can't."
Yeah,
you can't.
Yeah, he didn't brag.
You can't. Well, you can't. Yeah, because as soon as somebody else besides you knows, now you have a liability.
And that's something I was also going to ask you about. So in this whole story, uniquely almost in history, because he's one guy, he's got like perfect security. No one knows where he's going.
Yeah.
No one knows what he's doing. No one knows what targets he's selecting.
The information receipt to action time gap is enormous.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like you can text your boy
yeah.
and just be like, "Yo, I saw him moving through the south pasture." No, you can't do that, right? This is analog communication at its
mm-hmm.
at its true core, right? The fastest way you can get some communication to somebody is going to be a human on horseback.
Yeah. And when I was reading this whole story, I thought, even though it sucks to be by yourself, generally
it's the safest way.
In this particular situation, it saved his ass because there's no written orders. There's no way to predict what he's going to do, where he's going to be. Mm-hmm. And so he's able just to appear out of nowhere and be gone. And there's no one that knows. His wife doesn't even know. Mm-hmm. No one knows.
That will only work for so long.
Yeah. Well, you'll see now what they eventually, catch on to what's going on, and he has to become an actual renegade. And he probably was lucky to survive.
Sure.
But at this point, he's still kind of keeping up pretenses.
Mm-hmm.
The next month in May, he killed the sergeant. Same way. He went, they didn't change their pattern.
Right.
He did change his FFP though. He didn't go to that same one, but he had multiples that he'd already put up along their route. So about a month later, he went to a different one, and here come the patrol, and both their faces were burned in his mind from the gatepost incident.
So yeah,
he knew who they were. And so the lieutenant was easy because he was in the front. But the second time, he had to wait. The sergeant was somewhere, back in the troop. But he was close enough he could see. And when he came, he dumped him too. Okay, so now Jack's thinking, hey, maybe I'm done. Right? I've avenged my boys. I'm not really a soldier. Should I or should I not continue? To do this.
You're right.
That's what he's thinking in his mind. In June, this is the next month after the sergeant. William was sent home. Remember, William had volunteered and went to go serve under Jackson and Lee in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably where most of the fighting actually took place in the whole war, is with those guys. He gets sent home on furlough. He'd survived Antietam, which is nuts, but he was taken prisoner. But he was paroled. It was common for prisoners to be paroled back then. And so if you get sent home on sick leave on parole, it's basically two promises. You promise that you're not going to actively engage the Union, and they promise they're not just going to arbitrarily kill you or capture you again. So he goes back to Bubbling Springs, which is in occupied ground.
Union territory.
The Union knows he's there,
Right.
but they let him be, and they let his mom recuperate him because he's emaciated. He's, totally effed up.
Mm-hmm.
Probably PTSD at the wazoo,
Mm-hmm.
And so Elizabeth gets to see her son, and he hardly can't move. He's destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all over it. They feed him, they're exercising him, and they're rebuilding him. That happened. So Jackson only killed two dudes, the two dudes that killed the younger brothers. Oh, by the way, no, like I said, there's no text. William didn't know his brothers were dead till he got home. There's no way to. The Confederates weren't. Sometimes you could communicate, you can get a letter out, but as the war went on, that broke down more and more, more so on the Confederate side than the Union.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times they didn't know anything until a guy showed up and told you.
Right.
So like in this case, William had no idea that his two younger brothers were dead. Now by September, the oldest son, Robert, was this, like I said, this leader of this guerrilla group called Hinson's Command. And he's killed in an accidental meeting. Robert had already escaped Union imprisonment 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
He was like this brilliant...
Just Houdini.
Yeah, he was like this brilliant guerrilla leader. But just an accident, like I said, war's crazy. He's in charge of a small, not even a big unit, so it's like 7 dudes. And he didn't have any information. There was a small unit of Union, and the Union didn't know about him, and he didn't know about them, and they just bumped into each other.
Chance contact.
And just kind of winged a couple of shots at each other, just, not even really aimed. And one of the bullets hit Robert right in the head and killed him.
Mm-hmm.
So that happened in September. Now, by early of 1864, William is healthy enough now to go back to his regiment in Virginia. So Mom's gotten a chance. She got him in June, so she basically had him for 6 months. Got him 3 squares a day and tended to him. But he's going back, right?
And another brother was just killed.
The oldest brother was just killed. So now three of the boys are dead now.
As a result of the war.
As a result of the war. His dad gives him a brand new horse and saddle and a brand new Colt Dragoon pistol with a bunch of loads and spare cylinders. And, of course, they load him up with as much food as his horse can pack. And they send him away, not realizing they'll never see William again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They don't know that yet. In the meantime, the commanders at Fort Donelson had about enough of Jack. Like I said, the 2 guys died under suspicious circumstances, either on or right around Jack's farm.
Mm-hmm.
It happened to be the 2 guys that had killed his sons and paraded them around.
But nobody can prove anything.
They can't prove anything, but remember, they don't have to prove anything.
Yeah, not back then.
And so they just declare him an outlaw and make the plan that in the morning they're going to go arrest him and bring him back and kill him, hang him. But the troops open their mouth and townspeople got word of this, and someone made it out to Jack's farm that night. And right at the time, there's a big blizzard coming in, big winter snowstorm. And Jack don't have that much time. They're coming in the morning. And so he has to think fast and accurate. And so what he does is there's so much snow, they have a sleigh there, a wagon, but on skis instead of wheels.
Mm-hmm.
And he loads that up with hay, and he puts Elizabeth and the remaining kids in there with as much food and money and whatever he thinks she needs as they can pack. And then he takes 2 of his best young male servants and has the mules hooked up. And he says, he's gonna lead them west and have them cross the Tennessee River to the next county. She has family over there. Elizabeth does. And he says, I'm gonna lead you part way, but I'm gonna get away from her because I'm the one they want to kill.
Right.
So he leads them far enough that they kind of know where they're going. And then and the good news, I mean, the blizzard sucks, but the good thing about it is it covers the tracks.
Sure. Yeah.
So he turns back, goes back to the house, gets his rifle and whatever thing he needs, goes to the head man of the servants and gives him a big pile of money and tells him, I don't know what's going to happen in the morning, but it ain't going to be good. Do your best to protect what you can, and if you got to give up property to save you and your people, you got my permission.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Jack leaves. And this is where we get to his bluff. He'd already pre-scouted this bluff area, and so that's where he ends up, and that's on the Tennessee River, on a high bluff, and he'd found a cave and stuff, and that's where he went, and he just went there originally just to wait it out.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't anticipating shooting or anything, and he wasn't sure what was going to happen, in the morning when the Union got there. Well, they get there, and they move Sarah. Remember the servant gal that was kind of in charge?
Mm-hmm. Household 6.
They told her, hey, you're moving into the house with your family, and you just tell the North it's yours. I'm giving it to you.
Mm.
And oh, by the way, I didn't mention this. He'd already freed all the servants. That's the other thing. He realized that if the servants were still slaves when the Union got there, they would legally confiscate them and put them to work doing their work.
Mm-hmm.
But if they were free, then they were free. They couldn't press them into service.
Got it.
So he'd freed everybody, and they all had paperwork to prove they were free. And he also told them, since you're free, you can choose to leave, but if you choose to stay, you're going to keep your same job, and you're going to get a wage. And he says, I'll give you some time to talk about it. They all discussed it amongst themselves. They came back and said, thank you, Jack. We're all staying.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that tells you a lot right there. And so when the Union got there in the morning, they ransacked the house again. They demanded to know where Jack was. Sarah honestly said, I don't know. She had no idea where Jack was in the least, or Elizabeth. They didn't like that answer.
Right.
They ransacked the house, threatened her, threatened the other servants, and they ended up torching the house. Sarah ran in there with some of the other servants to help her and got as much out as she could, just throwing stuff out the windows. She was able to save, very little. And that's why we've lost a lot of information, because Elizabeth's family Bible we would know a lot more about the births and deaths, torched. Mm-hmm. A lot of that stuff got torched and it just burnt, to the ground. And so Sarah had to move back in with the other servants. Jack didn't know that for a long time. Within a couple days of him being on his little grotto up there, he saw a Union boat coming. I don't know if he did this on purpose or if it just happened to be luck, but right where his grotto was, there was 2 islands in the middle of the Tennessee, and the deep channel they had to take was on his side.
Okay.
Forcing them close to him. Mm-hmm. And so he sees this Union boat coming with boarded troops and supplies, and he's like, hey, this is a target of opportunity. So he shoots the highest ranking officer he can find on that boat, just dumps him. Creates pandemonium on the boat, but they power through. It takes a long time to get, they called it towhead shoot. It would take like 45 minutes. See, when you're motoring up the regular river, you're making, I don't know how many miles an hour, but you're okay. But once you cut in all the river's forces right there, and you almost come to a stop.
Yep.
So even though the
huge bottleneck, the legitimate, the epitome of bottleneck,
and you got the motor cranked up, you got black smoke and sparks flying out the top, you got that paddle wheel, but you're barely going. Mm-hmm. It takes everything they can to get through that,
and you're just sitting there.
And you're just sitting there like you're literally a sitting duck. Mm-hmm. And so he only killed the one guy. Like I said, he's not a professionally trained sniper. He's just kind of figuring this out as he goes. So he shoots the highest ranking guy, and then doesn't shoot anymore. They took some pot shots. They don't know where he is. They're shooting off in the weeds or whatever.
Right.
But they had no idea. And then off they went. And once they got through the chute, they powered off to the other side because they knew it came from that side, mm-hmm. and went away. Well, Jack, when he'd left the house, had brought like the servants had given him like a side of bacon, some cornmeal, some salt, and then he got his own water. There were springs coming out of that hill. He found a cave up there that he could kind of get into. It was cold. It's wintertime. And he got in there, got a fire going, and just slept on the rocks, which sucked. But over time, he started building like a little nest in there out of willows and duff. Mm-hmm. And just started kind of improving it. He took care of his horse. Here's something I thought was interesting that still holds true today. Jack always took care of the horse before he took care of himself.
As per.
And that's still a rule. I was raised around horses and livestock and was training and breaking horses as a teenager. I rode horses almost daily at the Basses as part of my job. And an absolute rule was when you get done for the day, the horse gets taken care of first. Mm-hmm. Horse gets brushed down, he gets fed, and then you don't go and eat yourself. You take care of the horse first. Yep. And that's how Jack was with his mare there. He built her own little kind of a grotto up there. He made a blanket for her, and he always was taking care of that horse, before himself. And it's smart because if you get into close contact with the enemy, that horse is going to save your ass, mm-hmm. If it's healthy, right?
Yep.
Versus if you neglect the horse, you may get killed, mm-hmm. right? So anyway, that's what he's doing. He gets up there, he shoots the one guy. It's not really a thing yet. And he's trying to, figure out what he's going to do. He wants to know where does his wife make it or the kid, he's got a lot of anxiety. Okay. The very next day, another boat comes. This time he shoots 2. Because they're sitting there for 45 minutes. It only takes him a couple seconds to reload, mm-hmm. right? So he shoots 2. So now he's up to 5, right? He killed the 2 guys that killed his sons, and now these are just kind of like targets of opportunity. They came close to his bank. He could see who the officers were, and he, figured, hey, I'm going to take this chance. And he judged that they couldn't really do anything about it because they can't.
Yeah, they can't.
They're looking at a big bluff.
Can't see anything.
They don't know where he is. It wasn't like now with the Marines where you guys have boats that are designed to hit the bank and you're disembarked.
Yeah, no, this is not
That
happening.
that ain't going to happen.
That's not
going to take a long time to get on the bank.
Yeah,
probably get slaughtered, right? So they weren't going to attack him. So after a while, probably like 6 days, he decides he's got to go see how Elizabeth's doing, see if she even made it. Now there's 3. Remember in Outlaw Josie, where Josie shows up at the rope raft thing,
Yeah.
right? There's 3 of those, in his near area. The main one is constantly occupied by Union troops. It's the main one. It's a little place they called Donelson, I think. There's another one that's occupied by Union troops periodically, but there's a third one that he's never seen any Union troops at. But again, like we were saying, he just can't boldly walk up there and pay his fare. So he shows up in the weeds. Like this whole time, ever since they burnt his place and he's a known outlaw, Jack does not travel the roads. He does not travel the trails. Jack stays in the brush, parallel to the trails and roads, but always back. And it reminds me of the guy, remember I told you the guy I worked for, the LERP guy? He told me the same thing in Vietnam. He says, I would never go down the trail of the road, Nate. He goes, I always stayed about 30 yards off to one side of it or the other. I would follow it, but not on it.
Yep.
And so it reminded me of that. So he gets to this place and he just watches it for a while to see if there's any Union. And he wants to time it to where he's the last ferry ride. So there's nobody there. He's got to get to the western side.
To go check on his wife.
On the Tennessee River, right. He's still on the eastern side between the rivers. So he times it right. He gets on the ferry. He gives the guy a gold piece and says, everyone knows who he is. He says, you're going to forget you saw me. And the guy smiled and said, you bet your ass I already have. And so that guy helped him, right? So he gets across. From there, it was a short ride to where she was. And she'd made it. But here's the sad part. They had 2 little babies that were already kind of sick. And they both died. They made it, but they died within a few days of her getting there. The stress of that blizzard travel, and they were already sick. So she told him that. Jack, because of that, didn't even tell her that her house had been torched that day. He said, she's had enough pain. I'll tell her that tomorrow. And of course, all the remaining kids were happy to see their dad. They all mom and dad were hugging and crying, and the kids clammed around and hung on to whatever they could get a hold of. Poor little kids. They don't know what the hell's going on. All they know is that their little tranquil world's been
upended,
smashed.
Yep.
Now, we should talk about this son, Albert. Albert's like 17 at this point. And because dad's gone, he steps up and becomes the man. And he starts conducting all of his dad's business because dad can't, because dad's an outlaw.
Dad's an outlaw.
Yeah. And so that was a big help. And he took care of the younger kids. He took care of his mom. He took care of any business dealings his dad had going down, because there was still business going on. So Jack leaves. He gave her some more money, or Albert, and again left in the dark. He always came and left in the dark. He was definitely afraid that if it was known he had been there,
yep,
they would just come and kill everybody, including her family. So he bailed in the dark and made it back to Bubbling Springs to see how they were doing. And Saw's house was torched. Sarah explained to him what happened. He gave him some more money and told him, hey, he gave him some encouragement. They gave him some more food, and that's where he picked up the stamp set. He picked up the two things he picked up. He picked up a stamp set and an actual coffee pot. He was just making coffee with a pot, but one of those slave boys brought him a working coffee pot.
Mm-hmm. Like a percolator.
Yeah, and he gave that kid, a gold coin or whatever. And he was gone again in the dark. And he went right back to his place. Oh, they'd also given him, they made mattresses back then out of corn husks.
Okay.
They'd rolled one up and tied it onto his horse.
Okay.
So now he's in high cotton. He throws that corn husk mattress in his cave, and, he's an old man, so sleeping on the rocks is rough,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now he's got coffee, he's got a mattress, he's got plenty of food.
He's set.
He's set,
As long as his position doesn't get compromised.
Well, and again, there's no word from Colonel McKinney or Jack himself if he'd done this on purpose or if it just was happenstance. So not only does he have the bottleneck forcing him over to him,
mm-hmm.
and the bluff that stops him from attacking him directly, but they really can't approach him from the rear without him knowing, because behind him is a bunch of friendlies, and they're not going to be able to get in there without someone getting word to him.
Right.
Right. And so he just wasn't that afraid. I mean, he was careful, and every time he left and come back, he just didn't barge in. He would sneak in and look around to see if, they'd gotten in there while he was gone. And the other thing is they were sending people out just specifically to hunt him at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But like I mentioned earlier, they never got him. And, the North had access to some badass dudes themselves. Like, if they'd have sent a guy like you after him, he'd have been in danger, right? But I think the reason that never happened is because they were just afraid, right? The actual people that they would have had to use to go get Jack themselves are probably not wanting to volunteer for that.
Sure, yeah.
Because there's no way that you were going to be able to get away with that without them knowing you personally,
mm-hmm.
and you're going to be subject to recriminations. Colonel McKinney doesn't mention that, but I suspect that's part of why Jack was never got, not only because it was hard, but if you were to succeed or threaten him in any kind of a way, what was going to stop him from hunting you down?
Mm-hmm.
As we see, that's what he does. Is if you become a problem, he gets out in front and plans it out, and pretty soon you're dead, mm-hmm. right? So I kind of suspect that was part of it. Okay, so he gets back from Bubbling Springs. He tries to give the slaves some encouragement, gives them some money. He makes it back to the bluff. At this point, Jack's basically consciously decided, I'm gonna go ahead and become a fighter. He wasn't sure up to this point. He kind of started with the guys, and then those were opportunistic guys. But at this point, he's like, hey, I kind of got a good support system here. I kind of feel confident I can continue to do this. And so at this point, he's like, hey, I'm gonna get in the war, consciously.
Mm-hmm.
And so it ain't very long before another boat comes, He kills another two. Again, the officers. Any civilian boat never got shot at. And the military boats that came, he always picked the officers. So he had good target selection.
Mm-hmm.
If he'd have been a real sicko, anybody that came up and down the river would have been shot. But he wasn't like that.
Yeah, he knew what he was trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And so through the spring and summer of '64, he kind of waged a one-man war on the Union. And not always from the bluff, as snipers know, you got to rest your spot. If you just keep pounding from one place over and over again, they're going to eventually look you up.
Well, your ingress is going to be compromised. Your egress is going to be compromised in one way, form, or another, and it's over.
It's over. So he would abandon that bluff sometimes for weeks at a time. And because he'd already pre-prepped all of his other FFPs and duck blinds in various places, he had plenty of other places to go where he had a high probability of finding a high-value target. Mm-hmm. And so that's just how he kept it up, through that whole spring and summer of 64. Also, an event that happened in the summer of 64 that is worth notice, he made a Navy boat surrender. And that's never happened before or since, that an actual Navy boat surrendered to one guy. And by now, like I said, he's getting more and more confident. He'd kind of built, have you ever seen a speed loader for a muzzle loader like
I have
today?
Not.
Yeah, so guys, it's basically these little short tubes, and you pre-measure the powder, dump in that tube, and then you put the bullet in there along with the patch or wad or whatever, and it's got these two little caps on either end. So you the powder's in this end, you turn it up, you open the cap, and you can just pour that powder right down.
Oh, okay.
And the bullet follows it.
Yeah.
And then you take your starter, boom, and then the route, and then boom, versus how the old timers do it. Get the powder horn out, get the powder measure out.
Right.
So that's why they call it a speed loader.
Got it, yep.
So Jack kind of made his own speed loaders out of oiled paper where he pre-measured out all of his
charges.
Yeah, and had them laying there on the rock. So when the boat came, he'd just start pouring the lead into these guys.
Right.
And so he killed a handful of them, 5 or 6. And the Navy, so on this boat, there was Army infantry with their officers, and it was being captained and ran by Navy people. Mm-hmm. Well, he figured between the Navy and the Army, I'm going to target the Army because they're more likely to hurt us versus the Navy guy. He's part of it, but he's not.
He's just the driver.
He's not in direct combat, yeah. So the Navy captain was never shot in this episode, but 5 or 6 Army officers were. And the Navy captain, basically, he didn't know what was up there. It might have been General Forrest. So just in panic, he surrendered. He dropped the anchor and put the white flag up and called it. He was just sitting there. Well, Jack can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
He can't seize the boat, so he lights his pipe and he's sitting there looking at these guys, and they're all down there, covered, the deck's covered in blood. And a long time went by before the captain finally realized there's nobody coming.
Nobody to surrender to.
Yeah. So he takes the flag down, pulls the anchor, and continues on. And
unmolested.
Yeah, and Jack didn't shoot again because he'd hung the white flag.
So gentlemanly.
Yeah, and so that's another thing. Winston Churchill is quoted as saying the Civil War was the last war fought between gentlemen. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what he said.
Well, maybe from the officer's perspective, but I don't think on the infantry's perspective.
Right. I don't think Jack thought it was fought between gentlemen.
I don't think that. I don't think an average Confederate infantryman about ready to make contact with a Union troop line was at all gentlemanly.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I think it was like it was like
fucking savage.
It was brutal. Like almost, it was basically Roman times. The only difference was the sword was put on the end of a gun.
Yeah,
with bayonet.
Yeah, and getting shot. Like people have this really weird misconception about getting shot. You don't immediately die when you get shot.
Yeah,
like you don't just immediately die. There are some shots that will result in immediate incapacitation, but largely you're not going to die. It's going to take you some time,
especially back then.
Yeah. And that
slow muzzle loaders.
Yeah, that just means that if you're the line that's getting overran and you've been shot and you're physically incapacitated, you can't move, you can't do anything, you're just waiting for a bayonet at that point in time.
Yeah,
because that's what's going to happen.
And you're hoping, because a lot of these Civil War battlefields, there was hundreds and thousands of wounded men left on the field.
Yeah, yeah,
and in excruciating pain. and nobody can come help them.
Nope.
They're left out there in the sun, in the snow,
Yep.
and they wish they would have gotten a bayonet, right? It's just brutal.
It's absolutely brutal.
Yeah, and it was like thousands and thousands of American young men, that was their fate.
Yep. It's tragic, man.
They bled to death, suffering for hours and days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody coming to get you.
Yeah, and you're just left there.
Yep.
You know, at the end of Donelson, our people abandoned it, and what the Union did was they dug a huge mass grave and just threw all the Confederate boys left that are in there, right? And the same thing would happen the other way.
Yeah, and you got to do it from a sanitization perspective too, because then, you know, fucking 100 rotting corpses, that's going to have some severe health
Right,
impacts.
starts getting into the water table.
Yep.
It starts spreading disease in your own camp.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's just crazy the brutality that went down in this war.
Yeah.
You know, all wars.
All wars.
So that was kind of unique. The boat surrendered. Here's some bad news. September 1864, Joseph Hinson, at age 16, joins the Confederacy and goes to join his brother William in Virginia. And
Probably see where this is going.
Jack couldn't do anything about it. He wasn't there, and apparently Albert couldn't do anything about it either. And it looks like Joseph wanted to go, and they couldn't stop him. The good news is he's going where his brother William is, so Elizabeth and Jack figure that at least the boys can look out for each other.
One would think or hope.
Yeah. By late summer of 1864, the Cumberland it's the smaller of the two rivers, and the water got so low that Union boat traffic ceased. And Jack at that point had felt he utilized his bluff on the Tennessee a little too much, and figured, just,
He bailed.
I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
So he sat there and thought about it for a while. And he said, hey, I'm going to cross to the western side of Tennessee. That'll be on Elizabeth's side. It'll make it easier for me to tend to her. And I've already got a bunch of duck blinds, Union patrols mapped out. He had plenty of places, FFPs to go.
Right.
So late summer 1864, he polices up his gear, abandons the grotto, and heads to the other side, the western side. And he spent, the rest of the summer and fall of 1864 targeting cavalry patrols, infantry patrols, boats, and just kept racking up numbers and kept making those stamps on his gun barrel, right? And just trying not to be killed, trying not to give away his friends or his family. And again, no one's told him to do this. No general is directing his activities. This is just all him. One guy. That being said, the grapevine was up and running, and
for sure,
both sides' commands knew he was out there, right? By late October of 1864, he was working with General Forrest for the third time. The first two times, Colonel McKinney doesn't address, but we know that he had, based on Major Anderson, is General Forrest's adjutant.
Okay.
General Forrest was a legitimate genius, seriously, but he was illiterate. And so how this Major Anderson became his adjutant was because General Forrest was illiterate. He had to dictate everything and have it dictated to him. General's got a lot of correspondence going back and forth. And so he got Major Anderson and dictated what he wanted to communicate. And Major Anderson was an educated person and very politely and respectfully said, General, sir, I could dictate this word for word, but if you would allow me to clean this up and I'll let you read it. Well, he took like a 3-page correspondence down to 1 and then read it back to the general, and he goes, fuck, you said that better than me and 3 times faster. He goes, I'm making you my permanent adjutant on the spot, right? So that guy we get a lot from. And we don't know how General Forrest found Hinson. There's no record. And obviously Jack didn't have a permanent address or a phone number. But we can kind of interpret, because of the kin and everyone knowing everybody, it's highly likely that Jack and General Forrest both knew someone they both trusted, and that's probably how General Forrest was able to make contact with Jack.
Got it.
And why did he want to make? Because General Forrest is aggressive, and he's now hatched a scheme to put an end to their control of these rivers. And he wants Jack, because Jack's been living there now for years and working there. And that's a good idea, right? So he hooks up with General Forrest in late October of 1864 in preparation for what's called the Johnsonville raid, executed by General Forrest, the last Confederate victory in the West. That theater was called the West back then. During this time that he'd gotten the western side, the Union had abandoned a fort, and sometimes Jack used that abandoned Union fort as a temporary grotto. When General Forrest got there, because Jack had watched the boats all the time, it's important to him because he's trying to get within rifle range. So when General Forrest was having his artillery officers set up the guns, they obviously had Jack there because Jack knew exactly how they were going to come up that river.
Right. And
so he told them they're going to do this, they're going to do this, they're going to do this. And so General Forrest's artillery officers had the cannon set up perfectly, to hit everybody. Mm-hmm. Well, the next day, a bunch of boats come up, and the Confederate artillery destroys them. And they burn and sank a bunch of them, but General Forrest had another one of his crazy ideas, and he confiscated 2 of them, repaired them enough, and then took 2 cavalrymen who have no training as being boat captains and said, "You're a boat captain today, bud." And the both of them were like protesting General Forrest. And he's like, "Hey, this is war. You better figure out how to run that boat because you're going to load your horse cavalry right on it, and we're going to attack the Union with it." And so,
and none of these dudes could swim, I bet.
Well, that's how they got one of the boats back. So one of the boats got shot and hit the ground on the far bank.
Okay.
And so they're pissed because it's got a bunch of food and clothes that they need on it.
That thing.
So one of the captains under Forrest did know how to swim, and he swam that big ass river. It's probably, it's as big as a Snake River probably.
Still, that's pretty big.
Big ass, 800 yards across. Mm-hmm. And he swam it, got over there. I don't know what he did, but he was able to hook onto it and tie it to the other bank, and just kind of and brought it to their side where they got all the food and clothes and stuff, and then they repaired it enough that they could make it work. And that guy was one of them. That captain that swam the river, he got told he was going to captain one of those boats, and he boarded his cavalry on the boat.
Perfect.
And so now they're going up the river, and Jack's leading them. Now Jack knows all the trails, and the whole thing is you've got to get up to Johnsonville without the North knowing you're there. Otherwise, they're going to start doing things. And that's why Jack was important. Just like Daniel Morgan, just like Lewis Wetzel, and just like you guys today, the snipers are
terminal guidance.
Yep, the snipers are the best dudes to lead big infantry units anywhere because they've been out there. They know what's going on out there. And if you're going to have a chance to be successful, he's the best guy to have. So he stays along the river with the main army, and he doesn't outrun the boats. He kind of, in case they need support. Mm-hmm. And so they get up there, and they make it to right across from Johnsonville without being discovered, but it's dark. By the morning, the Union commanders knew there was Confederates in the area, but they thought it was like a small scouting party. They didn't realize General Forrest had thousands of men and guns right across the river from him. And so by the early afternoon, Forrest let her rip. And Colonel McKinney doesn't explain how this happened, but somehow General Forrest got in there. Johnsonville's way up on this high bluff, and they can't lower their guns enough
to fire down,
to get down to where he is. And then the gunboats they had are too low
to fire up.
They can't. So he'd gotten right into the perfect place to where he could accurately destroy everything they have, but they can't hit him at all.
Okay, yeah.
Now, I don't know if Jack did that. I don't know if General Forrest, and Colonel McKinney doesn't say.
Or if it was accidental.
If it's accidental. But either way, he starts laying waste to Johnsonville. And now Johnsonville was the big, again, they're coming up these rivers, and they're supplying Johnsonville with all this food, guns, powder, medicine, clothes, troops to supply General Sherman, who's laying waste to the south at this moment on his,
right,
march underneath. Well, William and Joe are up there with General Lee holding General Grant there at the big siege at Petersburg. So, and again, by this point in the war, the Confederate leadership is almost incompetent. Jefferson has no idea what's going on, and General Forrest is just on his own initiative, right? And so he accurately realizes that if I can destroy this supply line, I can leave Sherman out here in the wind. And so he does that. He destroys Johnsonville so bad that it's not rebuilt until way after the war. And his report to his commander the next morning was that there was 2 miles of flames. Everything was lost. All the gunboats the Union had were sank. The whole fort was leveled. And by the next morning, Jack led him off into the woods and gone.
Right.
And so that was probably, according to Colonel McKinney, that was the last great victory in the Western theater by the Confederate side. And Jack's exact knowledge of how the boats move was critical, and obviously his guiding up to the riverbank. Side note: during this last march, it's where we got the exact description by Major Anderson of what Jack looked like.
Okay.
And
so he had already been fighting for some time.
Yeah, he'd already guided General Forrest 2 other times, so Major Anderson and Jack knew each other to the point where Major Anderson felt comfortable asking Jack about how he felt about his one-man campaign and the hefty price that was on his head over it. And this is a quote. This is what Jack told Major Anderson. "They murdered my sons and may yet kill me. But the marks on my gun say I'm way ahead in the game now, and I'm not done yet." That's what he told Major Anderson when he was asked about it.
Yeah, so he's still on a mission.
Yeah, and Major Anderson would not have asked Jack that unless he was intimate with him, right? That's not something you would ask just anybody.
Yeah.
And this all happened, seemed like they started off on their march on the 1st of November, 1864, and Jack led him away from the battle November 5th, the morning of November 5th. A side note on General Forrest, like I said, he was a legitimate military genius. In this battle alone, he did 2 things never seen before or since. He captured enemy naval vessels, manned them with his own troop, and attacked the enemy he stole the boat from. Plus, during the shelling, he and 2 other subordinate generals manned a gun themselves, and it's clearly the highest-ranking artillery team in military history. And again, he was illiterate and wasn't a trained military officer, so his commands to the artillery team were all wrong.
Not standard.
They weren't standard, but the men understood what he wanted.
Yep.
And of course, they were more than everyone loved. All his guys loved General Forrest. They didn't care that he wasn't he was just a badass. But we've never heard of an artillery team being manned by the commanding general and 2 subordinate generals.
Right.
That seems way out there.
Yeah.
But it's totally in character with General Forrest. and officers on both sides, both during and after the war, all recognized General Forrest's genius for war. He was just he was underutilized. By the time they figured out who he was, like if you could go back and have him in command at the original battle,
things would have been a different outcome.
Yeah, totally different, right? So by mid-November, Forrest had moved on, and after seeing Elizabeth and the kids and resupplying, Jack moved back to the eastern side of the river and back to his bluff. And by now he realizes this war is getting ready to stop. We're not going to win this war.
Mm-hmm.
And so through that rest of that winter, there was heavy boat traffic trying to rebuild Fort Johnsonville. So he had a lot of targets. Sometimes he'd come down and attack the columns of infantry and cavalry, just kind of maintained the same pace. One of his favorite targets was what they called a press gang. So the Union had a rule that if they were out of food, clothing, fuel, whatever, they could just take a patrol out into the countryside,
take it,
and requisition what they needed from the people. So those were some of Jack's favorite targets, if he could find a press gang. And, of course, this made him more popular with the citizens.
It's almost like Robin Hood.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that was something that was going on. The troops that were sent to hunt him down, because they constantly were recruiting people to go hunt him personally. He was such a problem. They never returned with his head, and they often returned with one of their own tied across his horse. It was very dangerous to hunt Jack. Didn't work. It got them killed.
Mm-hmm.
During this time, the Confederate regular soldier was shoeless, foodless, clothless, maybe weaponless, but he was still out there following orders, sleeping in the dirt, and lining up and ready for battle when he was ordered to. It's like an unprecedented military achievement.
Mm-hmm.
No army has behaved more nobly with less
and with pride.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But Jack was well fed, well supplied. He wasn't suffering any of these problems. But like you and I've said before, there are benefits to being a sniper, but there's consequences. If a regular troop was captured, he'd get paroled and go home. If Jack's captured, he's going to be swinging from a tree by the end of the day.
If not, right. Much worse.
Much worse, right. Okay, so now the end of the year's coming. By January 13th, 1865, Jack's son William, who's up in Virginia, he's at the siege of Petersburg. His leg is shattered, and it was amputated by exhausted surgeons, and he died the next day. So now William's gone. Jack doesn't know. No one knows. This is late in the war. Telegram wires are down everywhere. The Confederacy doesn't have the logistics to transfer messages. And so William's just gone and no one knows for a while. Joseph's still alive, but Joseph can't get anything out, and he's got to keep following Robert E. Lee around anyway. Jack knew the war couldn't go on much longer, and he continued to hunt Union soldiers, sailors, but he took less and less risks to himself. He wasn't quite as aggressive, Before, maybe he would take great risks to get a target. Now it had to be pretty safe for him to take because he knew this isn't going to continue, right?
Yeah, man, my luck's going to run out.
Yeah. And I bet you can comment on this. Soldiers probably even now, when they can accurately predict what's going to happen in the future, they're probably less likely. So, like, let's say over in our own recent situations, once our guys realized it was over, they're probably less likely to expose themselves to danger because they realize, hey,
they want to survive.
This is bullshit.
They want to survive.
Yeah, let me get out of here. No one wants to be the last guy killed in a bankrupt scenario.
Correct,
right?
Yeah.
And so Jack was manifesting these feelings and behaviors as he perceived the Confederacy's loss. Mm-hmm. The war's going to end soon. We can't continue. I'm not going to put myself at risk as much.
Right.
Though I will still take certain opportunities where I got to get, a good chance. So that's kind of how he's acting.
Make hay when the sun shines.
Make hay while the sun shines. He won't know William's gone until the war's over. One thing that he did do, though, he may have picked down his attacks on the Union themselves, but because of more and more lawlessness, regulators, guerrillas, returning soldiers with nothing, the predations on his community became worse. Mm-hmm. From not Union soldiers, from just regular returning soldiers or outlaws.
Right. You're trying to, again, survival is taking place.
Yeah. And so people got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so he started to hunt those people. And these are extrajudicial. These people never got stamped on the barrel.
Got it.
The barrel has 36 or 37 stamps on it. Best as Colonel McKinney and I can tell is that those were legitimate Union officers and soldiers.
Combatants.
The extrajudicial killings of outlaws, bushwhackers, criminals, he didn't put on the barrel. Mm. He just dumped those guys and kept it moving. Mm-hmm. And so he's kind of transferring at this stage. And the war's going to be over in a few months, at this point. Let's talk about young Joseph. So Joseph's brother's been killed, but he continued to fight under General Lee till the end. Joseph was standing there on April 9th, 1865, with his weeping, hungry, blood-stained, and exhausted comrades when General Lee ended the hopeless bloodshed and surrender. Joseph and his comrades gave one final salute to their beloved General Lee. Think of that. Joseph Hinson was standing there at Appomattox. Isn't that crazy? Haggard, emaciated.
Oh, yeah, man.
Shoeless.
Yeah.
Covered in sweat and blood and everything. And they had tears in their eyes. That's how much they loved General Lee. It's just a crazy, crazy thing that happened in history, right? Yep. Those guys would have gone to their death following General Lee.
Absolutely. Without question.
That's why they were teared up, because he had mercifully, General Lee was not, what do they call him today? I'm not thinking of it, but he wasn't like a political hothead. He was a practical, pragmatic military officer.
Yeah, he was a soldier.
And he also realized that he's responsible for these boys. And when he realized, he could have, a lot of people tried to get him to do it, continue to guerrilla fight. And he was like, no, why should I keep killing my own boys in a futile effort? I've looked at everything. I understand everything. The chips are in. It's time to surrender and stop this, right? But he didn't do that up until he had to literally be checkmated, right? If he had any route, he would. That's why he made it so long, because he was very talented as an officer, and he would find ways to continue legitimately. And otherwise, it would have, without General Lee, in my opinion, it would have ended way earlier.
Got it, yeah.
Okay, so that afternoon, a reporter asked General Lee, "Who's the greatest subordinate commander that you have?" And he replied, "A man I've never seen. His name is Forrest." Within 6 days of that surrender, Lincoln was shot. 11 days after that, General Joe Johnston surrendered to Sherman. All this happened in quick succession. Jack, he learned of the surrender within days because the telegrams and the grapevine, this is big news. It's just going to shatter through the countryside like lightning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Jack knew the war was over. So right then he stopped shooting Union people. Bluecoats he never shot a bluecoat again.
Mm.
Joseph, at the surrender, was disarmed, demoneyed, and told he can walk home. Penniless, weaponless, foodless. And what happened is, the men all knew each other. There was a handful of them from his, neck of the woods there.
Yeah.
So they got together. Now, this is dangerous because there's
Very
hoodlums,
dangerous.
hoodlums everywhere.
Yeah, not everybody knows the war's over.
Right.
We got all kinds of...
General Forrest has no idea the war's over right now.
Right.
No one's told him, and he's still fighting
Mm-hmm.
because he's just a badass. He finds out a month later, and General Forrest was responsible when he found out General Lee surrendered, he surrendered. And some of them didn't, like no one of prominence. But there were some people out there, they're like, hey, we don't care what General Lee does.
Right. We're on our own program.
We're going to do our own program, and they got a bunch of their guys killed for no reason. Right. I'd much rather be under General Forrest, or at least someone who's not just going to waste my life for no reason.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
He knew nothing of the respect that General Lee gave him the day at the surrender. No one told him that for a long time. On May 6, a month after Appomattox, Joseph made it to Dover. He was paroled at Fort Donelson. His age was listed at 17. So imagine this so he joins at 16, the war's over at 17, but he might as well be 55.
Yep.
The stuff he's seen.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to Bubbling Springs, saw the devastation there, talked to the servants a little bit, and then went on to Sulphur Wells, the name of the place where Elizabeth was, reunited with his family, and shared the devastating news of William's death. And the sad part is that Joseph must have died soon after this, because all the records of, Elizabeth kept records of everything. Joseph never mentioned again.
Okay.
No marriage, no kids. All the kids that lived, she kept track of them.
Got it, yeah.
That's the practice down there. The family Bible was where they kept the records of everything. And so Joseph either succumbed to something, killed himself. There's no telling.
Yeah.
I'm sure he had, PTSD at the highest level,
Mm-hmm.
And just wasn't able to recover. He made it home. At least she got to see him.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't last long.
Right.
And now you're going into Reconstruction.
Right.
You're still occupied. They're still hostile. And Jack, more importantly, is an outlaw.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a problem for Jack because he's got to find a way to rehabilitate what's left of his family and the Black Hinsons, but he can't openly walk around, travel the road, conduct business. The good thing is Albert, by now, is kind of the functioning head of the family, and so through Albert, he can he'd already decided, I'm abandoning Bubbling. I'm too close to Dover.
Mm-hmm.
So he deeded Bubbling Springs to Albert.
Okay.
Albert sold it, got the money, gave it to his dad, and then he gave that money to Elizabeth, and she bought their next place down a White Oak Creek, down by Waverly, probably 40 miles south of Dover, more rural, and kind of right in the middle of where his oldest son was running the Hinson Brigade, the Hinson Command.
Okay.
So a lot of those people were friendly, and it was more rural, farther away from the long arm of the law.
Yep. Where you have community policing.
Yeah. And they did the best they could to rebuild their life. Albert got married, had a bunch of kids, some of which died, which they did back then. Jack rebuilt what he could of the business. He went back to having a blacksmith shop, a tack shop, a farm, a little dry goods store. There's all kinds of records from local people going in there. I bought 5 pounds of cornmeal from John Hinson. I paid 75 cents. A lot of that. So we know he was active. He took up rifle matches.
Okay.
And stuff like that. He was, in that community, considered the grand old man, an expert rifleman based on his deeds.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the guys that had also survived the war and knew him kind of, flocking, older guys. And so he didn't have a bad last 10 years of his life. I mean, he'd suffered a tremendous loss. He'd lost, out of his 12 kids, he'd lost 6 of them. 4 boys and 2 girls, all as a result of the war.
Mm-hmm.
He had a price on his head the rest of his life. They never caught him. Again, I think they could have caught him if they really wanted to, but I think they were afraid of what would happen.
Yeah, the citizens. Someone
was going to look, and it was going to be personal.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't going to blame the brigade or the commanding general. They're going to blame you,
mm-hmm.
like Jack had.
Right. You're going to get singled out.
Yeah, you're going to get the actual guy that comes is going to be the one they. Right. I think that's kind of how it played out.
Hey, I would not disagree with that one bit.
Yeah. And in 1873, a year before his death of natural causes, the Reconstruction government issued a military tribunal to collect Jack and convict him of his wartime activities and execute him. But there's no record that they ever actually did that. If they did, we're not sure what the ruling was, but what we do know is that Jack died of natural causes in 1874 in July, and never got hung. And so that's kind of the end now. Luckily, the rifle's extent. At the end of the war, Jack gifted the rifle to General Forrest, and General Forrest gifted it to Major Anderson.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And right now, that rifle exists in Tennessee to Major Anderson's descendant, a judge named Ben. And we can maybe there's a YouTube video where
we'll absolutely link it.
Judge Ben presents the rifle. You can see the marks. He talks a little bit about not only Jack's experience, but just it being in his family. He talks like when they were kids, when he was a little kid, the old people had the gun, and on family get-togethers, they'd bring it out and let the boys shoot it into a building, an old building they had.
Wow.
And so that's cool. So we can link that, and so the rifle is preserved. And back to Pierce. Pierce replicated the rifle. Got a chance to go inspect the real rifle and discovered that the twist rate of the extent rifle was 1 in 70, which wasn't anticipated based on some of the shooting. Pierce had originally built his replica to have a 1 in 24 or similar twist to shoot longer conical bullets.
Mm-hmm.
And so once he discovered what the real twist rate was, he replaced his barrel with the appropriate twist rate and went and conducted. And there's also a video we can link where Pierce talks about his shooting with the replica.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll be able to see the extent rifle, Judge Ben, who's the descendant of Major Anderson, who has the gun, and he's got a lot of cool anecdotes from the family tradition and the oral history. You'll be able to see Pierce's technical evaluation of the rifle itself, and I highly recommend anybody that's interested to get the Colonel McKinney's book. It's filled with Bible entries, journal entries, people that were there at the time's observations. Very well researched. And so I thoroughly enjoyed reading Colonel McKinney's book and all the research on this whole project. It was like I said, it was almost emotional to me because of my own family's Southern heritage. The way they talk, the way they act. I remember the way my family talked. You know, I came up in basically a Yankee-controlled and dominated school system, and so the education I received regarding this was radically lacking some information. And so everything I've studied here has affirmed my family's, some of their attitudes about it, right? Not saying they were right, but they weren't totally wrong either. A couple more interesting things that happened. So, since Joseph died, and so did Albert, had another son right after his dad died, and he called him John, and he lived to be an old man.
Okay.
He also had a son that lived, he called Joseph. His first two sons, Albert named Robert and Joseph, after his brothers that had been killed. Way after the war, the Hinsons were in business with these people called the Wiggins, and Albert was a peer with the older Wiggins, and that Wiggins died, and then his boys that were Joseph and John's age took over, and something went wrong, and they waited in the brush for Albert and sniped him off his horse.
Whoa.
He was 52. He was never charged. Well, didn't matter because one of them got killed because Joseph hunted down one of those Wiggins boys and killed him with a knife and cut his heart out whole with the knife and went and hung it off the railroad sign where they'd shot his dad. Let it sit there and hang for the people. So these Hinsons, like I said, that Scotch-Irish background, and he was never charged or convicted. It was just they figured,
we're just going to let this play out.
we're going to let this play out, an eye for an eye.
Yeah.
You know? And that's why the Southern reputation's the way it is. And that's why you got movies like Outlaw Josie Wales. It's just a real thing. It's a real culture. And I thought that you'd find that interesting, that little epilogue.
That's like that epilogue is pretty, it's pretty ironic.
Yeah.
What a hell of a story, man. That's a really cool story. I mean, we've been talking about doing this episode for a long time, and this was one of the first guys that you had discussed that you wanted to cover when we conceptualized this.
Yeah.
So, man, thank you very much, dude. That was a freaking badass history lesson right there. So, thank you, man.
Yeah, no, it was. I'm just glad I have an opportunity to talk about it. I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
Always have been. It's interesting to see how much effect one guy can have all out of proportion
Yep.
To himself.
Indeed.
And the circumstances were there, but I think you have to be a pretty talented, pretty competent person to seize those circumstances and not get yourself killed.
Yep.
especially without any actual formal military training.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a hunter, I've always said, man, I mean, yeah, the tactics will come. The tactics will eventually come. You will learn the tactics. You can be taught the tactics, but that mindset that's where it lives.
Well, I didn't say this on the other FFPs that weren't on the bluff. He would find something similar. He was always worried about being attacked directly.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to shoot at an infantry troop or a cavalry troop,
got to have some sort of limiting terrain feature. We got to have some sort of obstacle in between.
You got to have a way to slow him down.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Now, he wasn't always able to get exactly what he wanted, and he always had a dragoon horse pistol on him as a last resort.
Yep.
Right? If the terrain is such that they can attack, and interestingly, none of them ever chose to, and that may be representative of their lack of training.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at that point in time, if the officer was not providing
he's
direction,
gone, yeah,
then your unity of command just completely falls apart.
Right.
Yeah.
But rather than sit around like they did, tactically, if they were in a situation, attacking him would have been the best because it would have made him move.
For sure.
Maybe and may have gotten him killed because now they can see him if he's upright and running.
That's right.
Not one of them ever did that.
Right.
When the shot went off, they sat there, they shit their pants, they looked around, they tried to provide aid to the downed officer. All while they're doing this, Jack's already egressing undercover. He's gone. Mm-hmm. And by the time they even thought about, and they never even went after him. They policed up their dead and wounded and left. Mm-hmm. So it could be their lack of training. But he always had that dragoon pistol. He figured, hey, in the worst case scenario, if they overrun me, I'm going down with 6 shots.
Yep. Indeed, man. Well, Nate, thanks, dude. That's a hell of a story. And we should go grab some food and talk about the next episode.
All right.
Right on, man.
I'm ready for that.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.